Camera tracking is one of essential skills in VFX, and it can be done with Blender. Whether you want to place your talent inside of a 3D scene or just to place some text in your footage, you are going to need tracking. I want to teach you how to do it from the very basics, and we are not going to follow the quickest path. At the very beginning, we are going to add some tracking markers that will be faulty, that will not behave the perfect way. We will refine it by hand, and we will do it so you understand what is happening, and only then we are going to do things like placing a multitude of them at once and filtering the faulty ones. So expect a bit slower pace. If you lack some video that you could use for this tutorial, just check out the description. I uploaded the exact one I will be using. It should be very easy to track. It's short, it's 30 FPS, it's not 4K, so it should not fry your computer even if it's a potato. But there still will be some more difficult things like a hand occluding few trackers or maybe some tracker getting out of sight. And that's because I really wanted those examples to be used at the beginning of tutorial. And that's it. So let me start with a quick introduction. If you are preparing your own footage, it's perfectly fine. If it's outdoors, you will have a lot of detail going on, and as long as there is no moving things like some trees, some greenery, some foliage, you can use that to track. But if you are indoors, keep in mind that we are going to track so-called features. We are looking for points of contrast, and when you are at home, you have white walls, plain color, you may lack those. And if you are recording in front of the green screen, now you actually lost any features in your video. And for that exact reason, you may want to add ones yourself. I printed few trackers. You can find those on the internet. That's basically free, but you could also use some duct tape, place some small object, or anything. That's it. It would be also great if you had some object, anything, of known dimensions in the scene. So this way, you will be able to match the scale, and also if you export the animation elsewhere, you will be 100% sure if scale is fine. In my footage, there is some Rubik's Cube. You can Google the dimensions for it, but also I just made a quick measurement of this tracker sheet, and between those points in corners, there's about 13.5 centimeter, if I remember correctly, and between those two little triangles in corners, it's 15 centimeters. So we can also use it as a reference point. That's basically it. But there is one more thing. That's about your camera settings. Please try to avoid shaky footage and motion blur. And that's not just moving your camera slowly, but of course that is also important. Try to keep short exposure time. This way, even if there is some camera movement, the image will be sharper. If you really want to do a dynamic scene or play with the blur in your lens, you may want to consider something different than using tracking markers and Blender. You may want to use something like a jet set or literally anything that uses external device like your phone to track your camera while you are recording instead of post. Anyways, that's it. And we can go now to Blender. This is the default scene and I don't like the layout. Let's move to the top bar here and hit a plus button. You can then go down to VFX, motion tracking, and here we are. Let's press open and pick your footage. Let's pick it and let's make the editor a bit bigger. We have timeline on the bottom and the timeline doesn't match exact length of our video. If you want to fix it, press set frames. But of course, if you don't want to track the whole video, you can always adjust start or end point on the timeline. Anyways, I'm going to fix it again with set scene frames because we are going to track everything. All right. This viewport may be a little slow for you. So if you want, I advise you to click prefetch here on the left side, and Blender is going to read this file into the memory. So now we are ready to start placing our trackers. If you watch other tutorials, they tweak settings on the left side or maybe tracking settings on the tracker, but we are not going to do that because we want to see how much of a difference those settings make. So let's say we have such tracker and we have points of contrast. You see white and black edges. We don't place the tracker at the middle, we place the tracker at the contrast point. So for me, this would be this triangle corner. I can control click here to add a tracker. And now at the bottom of the video, we have some buttons, so you don't have to remember any shortcuts. And there is one that does tracking of markers through the entire clip. Just remember to move to the first frame, like the frame 0. And okay, click. All right, it went out of sight, but it worked. But then when it comes back to the side, we could fix the tracking, right? So you can either select this tracker and grab it with G, or what I would even prefer, because it will be easier to fix things later if it's needed, add a new tracker in the corner, and now track it till the end. And this time, nothing occluded our tracker, but it still went out of sight. So what's going on? Few things could be going on. One thing is that we have our pattern size. Our tracker should not be too big. We want to focus only on the feature we are tracking and nothing else. So that's one thing. The other thing is search size. And that thing is actually invisible right now. We have to go to right top corner of the editor and go to clip display and enable search. Now you see this additional bounding box, which is telling us in which area we are going to look for this tracker. Okay, so that's one thing that could happen. Let's try tracking. All right, we were able to track a bit further, but it's not a spectacular success. So what else? Let's think. Maybe the light was different. Maybe the brightness changed. And that's a case in my video, even if there is no flickering light. And that's because I used a cheap lens. And as you can see, this footage is vignetting. It's brighter in the middle and darker on the sides. So yeah, that could be a thing. And another thing is that maybe it's trying to match using the wrong algorithm. Maybe it's not looking on the previous frame movement. So yeah, if you want to accommodate for both things, you have to change your tracker settings. So let's select the tracker, then track panel here and tracking settings. And we could change matching to use previous frame and also to use normalize. And then we get a better result. Of course, we had some issue, but that issue was only because the tracker is out of sight. So that's fine. Let's pick a moment when it appears again. And here we'll be able to add a new tracker. But when we add this tracker, it loses the settings we had before. So instead of changing them on the track, let's remove it. We could set them as our defaults on our left side. Here we can enable normalize and previous frame. And from now on, every tracker we add will have those settings. So let's track. Okay, so we have 3 trackers that are tracking the same part of the footage. They just tend to sometimes appear and disappear. So now as we have them, we can select them either here, maybe let's try in timeline or in the footage. You can select a few trackers at once if you press Shift. And then if you want to merge them, just press Ctrl J. So now we have only one tracker and it goes for the whole footage. That is fine. And of course, I think you already understood that if you change pattern size or the search size, you are able to change the default size of the new trackers, all right? But I am going to reset it. Let's go with defaults. We have actually covered a very difficult case of those trackers getting out of sight, and there is not much we are going to do further. We are just going to place more markers. So let's add one here. Oh, let's start with the very first frame. Let's add one here, make it smaller. Add one here, but we could keep the big search pattern. Don't go too far because it's going to lose everything, but it doesn't have to be very small. Like reasonable, all right? Okay, and add it also here. I'm going to review those tracking markers manually, so I don't want to add too many of them. 4 is fine, and we can start selecting them either with Shift or you can press C on the keyboard, and now you have this cool brush. If you use middle mouse button, you can deselect stuff. Okay, so let's track. And now let's slowly focus on the left tracker and the right tracker and see if anything is getting broken. Yeah, our finger went on in that tracker, but we can fix it. Add a new tracker, track it, and then select both, Ctrl J. This is fine. All right, going pretty well. Yeah, I like it. So let's move to the other one here. This one was actually pretty nicely tracking for the whole video. The thing is that sometimes it is driving away from the corner, you see? Because when we started, we placed it exactly in the corner when the white edge meets the black edge, and it started driving away. Oh, and by the way, if you are taking a look into this preview on the right side, you may want to enlarge it a little so the aspect ratio is correct. Otherwise, it will look weird. Okay. I mean, it shifted a little, but just a little. Maybe let me correct it. I just pressed G on the keyboard. Let's retrack it. But there is also like a refine markers button. But I just do tracking again. And let's see. Oh, it drives away anyway. Can I fix it? Not really. It would take too much time, and that's the thing. We want to have them as refined as possible, but we only have some amount of time, right? So soon I'm going show you how to add a bulk of the tracking markers. But for now, let me just fix this one. I'm not advising you to use G shortcut to grab and correct it, because sometimes it's harder to fix some errors this way if you want to like clean some part of the track. Um, but of course, I'm using it sometimes because it's fast. Okay, so it went out of sight. But also, like I didn't notice, like I don't know why I didn't notice, but look, it's here in this triangle in the corner, and then it jumps to this cross. I don't like it. If it's bad, just remove it. That's also fine. We can place a different tracking marker here, and it will probably perform better. Looks like it did. So it also went out of sight. And here it is back, so let's track it. Great. So now we can merge those together. And in a perfect world, I would speed up the video, right? But there is one more thing I would like to tell you. We will be looking for some reference point. We want to solve the camera motion and to be able to point that, hey, I want to place something in this place, and you don't want to eyeball where everything is. So if you want to have some place that will become an origin of your Blender scene, just place a tracker there. And then if you want to align some axes, maybe like this line here, then add another tracker. And later, we will be able to use them as reference points. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And another thing is that I used those two triangles on purpose here because I already told you that I measured distance between them. But anyways, that's it. If you want to play with it, you can keep adding the tracking markers by yourself, but I understand it may be boring. So soon I will show you how to make it a bit faster, but just take a look because I already have a file with a lot of those made by hand and it's not looking bad. So let's suppose we already tracked this footage. In that case, we want to save the file because sometimes it crashes during the solve. And in the past, we were in the tracking tab. We want to move to solve tab. It's not a tripod shot, so tripod is disabled. I leave keyframe enabled. Basically, in simpler words, Blender is looking for 2 frames, and between those frames, there has to be a lot of movement. And then it is trying to solve camera. And by enabling keyframe, we are letting it figure those keyframes itself. Refine is just telling Blender what we needed to solve for us. It's going to solve focal length, optical center, and radial distortion. So the camera will get new settings out of the box. Of course, it's great if you take notes and you know what focal length your camera was using, but Blender will do it for you. And actually, it's pretty nice to compare them. And you will see if there is a lot of error. Also, the focal length will be referring to full frame camera. So if you have a crop sensor, keep in mind the difference may be different and you should just use some calculator to see the correct full frame value. So we have all the settings right. We could press solve camera motion, but if you are looking for the best results possible, it would be also good to take a look on our timeline and see if anything could be corrected. This timeline is looking very, very good, but there could be some outliers. As you can see, usually those tracker position curves are kind of correlating, but there could be some outliers, like maybe a small outlier like here, which is driving away, or some peak like here, and those are suspicious. It doesn't mean that they are bad, but you could inspect those and see, something weird is happening. We could actually fix it by hand in some cases, and this is going to disappear on the timeline. Now it's matching everything else. Maybe let's also see what is going on here. It actually is driving to a completely different part of the cube, right? So you may want to either fix it and then track again, or you may even want to remove such thing. And very often you will have huge spikes that are obviously bad. We could even try creating such case. Let's add a new tracking point. Let's make a very small feature size. And by the way, if you want to scale not the whole tracker with the search pattern, but just the inside of it, you can press S twice on your keyboard. Also, let's make a huge search pattern. And it looks like it's driving away. And this is clearly visible here on the timeline. So if we get rid of those outliers, our camera solve will be way better. So let's remove it. And now, when we are done with cleanup, we can select everything with A on the keyboard and press Solve Camera Motion. We may get a warning at the bottom of the screen that there are some errors, and sometimes it's just point that is already behind the camera. And we had those trackers that were going out of sight, so that's fine. Sometimes it's going to tell you that it failed to evaluate some data. And my issue with that is that usually it doesn't tell us which frame it was. But also it may tell you that there is issue with certain track. And you could find this track here or look for it in one of the editors, like maybe in the somewhere in the dope sheet, and you could find it and remove it. But very often there is nothing to worry. If you want to know if you need to worry about it, just make the timeline bigger and look into it. Before you pressed solve, you had no blue curve here, but now we have it. This is our camera movement. It looks completely fine in my case, but very often there will be weird spikes, or it may be completely flat in some points. Of course, it may be a huge movement or camera that is very shaky, but very often something is off. And in those cases, you could just navigate to this area and inspect the trackers. When I was tracking something in the past, very often I had cases like this finger occluding trackers. Maybe I was walking and occluding trackers behind me, and there were two little trackers on those frames to track. So I was just adding more trackers in other areas and praying that the result is going to be good. But anyways, my timeline seems to look pretty fine, so now there's another thing to check. After pressing Solve Camera Motion, there is a new information. Here on the top bar on the right side, there is a solve error, and honestly, we don't have that many trackers. It was done by hand, and the solve error is pretty small. This is just 2 pixels, but the target we are aiming is below 1, and we want it to be as close to 0 as possible, because this is telling us how well our tracked motion is going to match the footage. And if you, for instance, have seen those Instagram filters or some other, Google Meet presentation, 3D objects that are attached to your face or are doing something in the background, they often look shaky, they are jittering, and that is because of imperfect tracking. If the tracking is made well, and the object kind of sticks to the video. And we could try doing that. There are 2 ways, and we could actually combine them. One is to add more features, and the other is to remove features that are bad. You could start clicking on them, inspect, and see this one has average error of 7 pixels. So we could get rid of it. And if we solve the motion right now, all right, this is great. We only removed a single tracking point, and we have solved error of 1.57. So we could go for more of them and see if there is anything suspicious. But if you have a lot of those, you don't want to do that by hand. And I also promised I will show you how to add more features easily. So let's do it. Let's go to Track, and there is a button Detect Features. It has some settings here, and let's go through them one by one. I'm fine with the placement. Let's place it in the whole frame, but you could also use some area that's marked on the screen. Margin is just the margin from the border of the image, so let's leave it. threshold is like filtering out bad features. But there is not many of them right now in the screen, so maybe for now let's skip the threshold and let's focus on the distance. There is some minimal distance between the features that are being added, and if you are desperate for increasing number of them, you may want to lower this factor. So, all right now it is using, for instance, 4 new trackers per each of those printed, or maybe at least for this one. So, all right, we could give it a shot. And there is not that many of them, so maybe the threshold is not necessary. But we could actually raise it just to filter out a few more. And let's see. We have the new trackers, but of course they are not tracked yet. So let's press track. Let's wait. And some of them got lost because they were occluded by the finger. And some of them are kind of twitching. Can you see it? So there is a chance that there will be a high error, but we can filter it out later. So I'm not going to remove it. I'm going to first do the solve with all of those selected, and we will filter the bad ones later. So I'm solving, and my average projection error actually is increased. But if now we go to cleanup and press clean tracks or filter tracks, we could get rid of the bad ones. If we use clean tracks, we can either select the bad ones or just remove it. So that's up to you. Let's pick, I want to track 15 frames, and let's set the reprojection error that I'm going to tolerate. And let's change the action to delete track. So we have some preview of what is going to happen, and it's going pretty bad. But let's start increasing the number. Or maybe let's change number of tracked frames to 10, so it is less strict. Let's undo because it removed way too much. Let's try 20 of the reprojection error. All right, even if we go just with 2.5, we should still have some trackers available. And now let's solve the camera motion. And now we have a solve error of 1.1 pixel. So it's something we could tolerate. And actually, when I was experimenting before, I was able to achieve, without struggling too much, an error of 0.65 pixel, which is even better. But now, because I'm doing everything kind of live, I have less time to tweak it. But believe me, I just added a lot of features using this detect, and you can actually see that there is a lot of them added, like they were not added by a human, and then cleanup helped me. So we could press on setup tracking scene button, and from now on, we should have some plane and also a cube. But what is important is that there is a camera that has some camera motion. The motion is going to be weird. It will look like some suicide bomber diving or some dogfight. But believe me, this motion is perfectly fine. The only thing is that it has to be oriented with the scene properly. So when we begin aligning our scene, we are looking for 3 points that are on the floor and are as distant from each other as possible. So I have selected those three, and we can press floor. That already changes something in the orientation. However, the scale is bad, and we haven't corrected orientation of the origin. So now let's think about adjusting the scale. I already told you I measured distances between some things on my sheet with printed markers. The thing is, some of them are gone. And we can either place them again, but we will risk higher solve error when solving the camera, or we could take a look on other trackers and try to estimate the distance between them. So between those two, I'm measuring right now, it should be about 5 centimeters between their edges. So we can select them, and then we can go to this distance, and a single Blender unit is equal to 1 meter in real life. So if it's 5 centimeters, it's going to be 0.05. Then we press set scale, and in our viewport, the only thing that has changed is the amount of movement, and of course our camera is also not right because it's clipping into this this cube. But now, as I made it a bit smaller, you could see that what's happening here is kind of similar to our footage, right? So the next thing would be to position our origin somewhere. Like I would like to place something on this cube maybe. So let's say this is going to be my origin. And it also moved the cube. And now you could also want to set some tracker to draw an x-axis between your origin tracker and the set tracker. So you could have a tracker here in the corner, but I believe if I pick the one from this card, it's not going to perfectly match the cube here, but it will give me kind of similar result. So let's say it's x-axis. You see now this red arrow is facing from our origin to this tracker. So it kinda does a good job. Now we could start previewing things and aligning them. When we pressed set tracking scene, the thing that happened behind our eyes is setting a background image in the camera. If we disable this ground from the viewport, we will see that there is some background. And for me, it looks very good, but for some of you, this render undistorted feature may be actually distorting the background, so you may keep that in mind. Another thing is that we may want to set opacity to something higher, so it's more vibrant. And now I'm going to enable the ground back. You may want to play with depth, like to place this reference image in front. You may want to start playing with some offsets and so on. I don't like those settings. I have a different approach. I like to make my objects in the viewport less transparent. So let's select the ground, and we can go to Object and change, for instance, color settings and the alpha. The thing is, this is not going to work unless you go to Display Settings and enable Object, because by default it's set to material, and as you can see, it's opaque. Now, this cube already has some settings set by tracking scene setup, and I don't want it, so I'm going to remove it, but I'm adding my own cube. That's like a typical thing, right? Most of you probably remove the default cube when you start working with Blender, and then you regret it. If we use this cube as it is, when we scale it or rotate it, it's going to treat the middle of the object as an origin, and I would like it to be easier to place. So let me go to edit mode and I will just lift it by 1 meter, go back to object mode, and now when I scale it, it kind of scales out of the floor, right? So it makes it way easier to place. And let's try to align it with our cube. It's almost in place already because our cube corner was the scene origin. So we need to use this blue gizmo to move it on the ground. Let me click on it in this viewport. It's way easier now. Let's rotate it to match. Not bad at all. We can duplicate it because it's a cool box. It already has all the settings of visibility and so on that I like. Oh, the thing is, I did something wrong and it went under the ground. Let's fix it. Let's also align it with the ground. And yeah, I probably accidentally moved it with the green gizmo, not the blue one. But here we can align it. Nice. So let's duplicate it with Shift D. And let me move it to the other Rubik's Cube. Let's rotate it. Okay. Let's make it a bit bigger. Let's try to match it as well as we can. You can also Google dimensions of those cubes and try to match it. You will see that the scale reference is helpful. Of course, I didn't measure it very accurately, so it may be a little off, but it's always helping the scale. And let's also match this box. I'm going to align the corner correctly, and then I'm going to go to edit mode. And for me, it's a bit easier to adjust dimensions this way. We can make the gizmo visible and change the control mode from global to local, and now we can extrude along. Let's select this side, extrude it a little, and we can switch the gizmo back to global so we don't forget about it. And if we did everything correctly, our footage should kind of match the objects that we have in our scene. And I think it does match pretty well. If I had a bigger solve error, of course, it could still work, but you would have this feeling that it shifts a lot. So that's why I wanted to do those last steps on the file that I prepared earlier. But you are not recording live, so I believe you can get a great results by taking the things slowly. So that is it. You can take it further. You could add some text to your scene. It's really easy because you already have text objects in Blender. You could key out yourself from green screen and or maybe even use rotoscoping and put yourself in either scene in Blender or in Unreal Engine or in After Effects, somewhere else. There's a lot of possibilities. I hope you like what you learned, and if you want to see how to import this camera movement to Unreal Engine, I will make a separate tutorial, but I'm probably not going to dive much into the VFX because I'm mainly game dev. I don't work in VFX, and I mostly automate stuff instead of spending time tweaking them. So maybe you should look into videos of someone more experienced, but I believe I explained basics of tracking pretty well. See ya in the next tutorial.